At the Northway County tax auction, he took my house with a cold bid and my mother's nod. I thought I'd lost right there until I discovered the name on the receipt was just a shell. And the person who raised the final bid wasn't even in the room. That person signed with my hand through a company he'd never heard of. He beat me at the auction floor, but the next battle played out on paper. Bank covenants and priority liens. There, I didn't miss a single shot. My name is Harper Lane, and I've spent the last 10 years building a life that couldn't be taken from me, or so I thought. At 34, I work as an IT compliance specialist at Stellar Bridge Systems in Ridgeton, a mid-sized city in Northway State. The job pays well enough that I could afford the duplex at 1437 Maple Street on my own, no co-signer, no help from family. That independence mattered to me, especially after watching my mother lose herself piece by piece to Rick Dalton. Rick, my stepfather for the past 8 years, though calling him father in any capacity makes my skin crawl. He runs Dalton Construction, a third-rate contracting business that survives on underbidding jobs and cutting corners. The man has a gift for burning through money faster than he makes it, leaving a trail of mechanics' liens and angry suppliers in his wake. My mother, Marla, sees none of this, or chooses not to. When Rick's charm wore thin with the banks, he turned to family. Last month, he cornered me in my mother's kitchen with a loan document requiring my signature as co-borrower. "It's just paperwork, Harper," he said, sliding the forms across the granite counter he'd installed himself crooked, naturally. "With your credit score, we'll get a better rate. I'll make every payment." I didn't even pick up the pen. "My credit score exists because I don't co-sign loans, Rick." His face darkened. That particular shade of red I'd learned to recognize as the precursor to a tantrum. But I was 34, not 14. I walked out, leaving him to rage at the walls. 3 weeks later, the certified letter arrived. Tax sale notice, Northway County Recorder's Office. My hands shook as I read it. According to the county, I hadn't paid property taxes in 2 years. My homestead exemption had been removed. The duplex would be auctioned in 30 days. Impossible. My mortgage company handled escrow. I auto-paid everything. I pulled up my online banking, my tax records, every scrap of documentation. All showed payments current, exemption intact. The next morning, I stood at the recorder's office counter, gripping printouts like weapons. The clerk, a woman named Dolores with reading glasses on a chain, typed slowly into her terminal. "Says here you filed a change of address in January," she said. "Tax bills have been going to—" She squinted at the screen. "4782 Industrial Boulevard, Unit B." My blood turned to ice. I knew that address. Rick's construction yard. I never filed a change of address. Dolores peered over her glasses. "Got your signature right here on the form." She turned the monitor toward me. There it was, a form dated 6 months ago, bearing a signature that looked like mine if you didn't look too close. But I knew every loop and line of my own handwriting. This was good, but not perfect. The capital H was too narrow. The final E in Lane lifted where mine stays level. "I need copies of everything," I said, my voice steady despite the fury building in my chest. Every document filed regarding my property in the last year. While Dolores made copies, I called Blake, my half-brother from my father's first marriage. 6 years older and a forensic accountant. He taught me to document everything. Trust nothing. "Someone forged your signature," his voice crackled through the phone. "Harper, that's identity theft. You need to file." "I know what I need to file," I interrupted, watching the stack of papers grow. "But first, I need to know how deep this goes." That evening, I spread the documents across my dining room table like evidence in a murder case, which, in a way, it was the murder of my trust, my security, my carefully built independence. The forged signature appeared on 3 documents: the address change, a form removing my homestead exemption, and this made me see red an authorization to discuss tax matters with a third party. That third party was listed as Red Mesa Investments, LLC. I Googled Red Mesa Investments. No website, no listings, but the registered agent had an address, a law firm known for creating shells within shells. The kind of place where ownership disappeared into a maze of paperwork. My phone buzzed. A text from my mother. "Honey, Rick says there's some confusion about your house. Maybe we should all sit down and talk." I stared at the message, pieces clicking into place, the timing of Rick's loan request, the sudden tax sale, my mother's carefully neutral tone. They thought they'd won before the game even started. They thought I'd crumble, beg for help, maybe even sign that loan to save my home. They didn't know I'd spent 5 years working IT compliance, learning how systems could be manipulated, and more importantly, how to trace every digital footprint left behind. I typed back, "No need to talk. I understand perfectly." Then I opened a new document on my laptop and began typing. Formal complaint, identity theft and fraudulent filing, Northway County Recorder's Office Investigation Division. If they wanted to use my name against me, I'd show them what that name could do. The law was a weapon, and I'd spent enough time in compliance to know exactly how to wield it. Outside, February rain hammered against the windows. Somewhere across town, Rick Dalton was probably raising a beer. Confident in his victory, let him celebrate. The real game hadn't even started. The Northway County Treasury Auction Hall smelled like old paper and defeat. Fluorescent lights buzzed overhead, casting everyone in shades of gray and yellow. I arrived 20 minutes early, my phone recording in my jacket pocket, a folder of documentation clutched against my chest. Rick wasn't there. Of course he wasn't. Cowards never fight their own battles. Instead, a man in a cheap navy suit stood near the podium, holding a manila folder marked Red Mesa Investments. He had the look of someone who did this for a living, bored, efficient, untouchable, a professional proxy bidder. I found a seat in the third row, close enough to see everything, but not so close as to seem desperate. Around me, the usual auction crowd gathered, house flippers with calculating eyes, investors thumbing through property lists, and a few people like me, the ones about to lose everything. Then I saw her. My mother sat in the back row, pressed against the wall like she was trying to disappear. She wore sunglasses indoors, her purse clutched in her lap. When our eyes met, or at least when she turned toward me, she looked away. The auctioneer, a heavy-set man named Carl Briggs, called the room to order. "Lot 47, he announced. 1337 Maple Street, single-family duplex. Opening bid set at $89,000 for back taxes, fees, and penalties." My chest tightened. The house was worth at least $200,000 in this market. I'd put $60,000 down, paid on time for 5 years, all of it about to evaporate. $89,000, I called out, my voice steady. $90, the proxy bidder responded immediately, not even looking up from his folder. $95. $100. We climbed in 5,000 increments. The room watched like spectators at a boxing match. At $115,000, I hesitated. My savings could stretch to $120, maybe $122 if I liquidated everything, but that would leave me with nothing if this went wrong. $115,000, the auctioneer repeated, going once. $116, I said. The proxy bidder flipped a page in his folder, checking something. $118. $118,500. He looked up then, meeting my eyes for the first time. A small smile played at the corner of his mouth. $119,000. My throat went dry. I could feel my mother's presence behind me, the weight of her silence. Every instinct screamed to keep fighting, but I only had one bullet left, and something told me it wouldn't be enough. $119,000, going once, going twice. The gavel came down like a gunshot. Sold to Red Mesa Investments. The proxy bidder walked to the clerk's table to complete paperwork. I forced myself to follow, to watch, to document. He handed over a cashier's check with practiced ease, signed forms with a Mont Blanc pen. When the clerk handed him the receipt, I leaned close enough to read it. That's when I saw it. The power of attorney form attached to his paperwork, granting him authority to bid on behalf of Red Mesa Investments. The signature date was backdated by 3 months. The notary stamp was from Cheryl Nguyen, a name I recognized. She worked at the law firm that served as Red Mesa's registered agent. But it was the signature line that made my blood run cold. Authorized representative of beneficial owner. The actual buyer's name was nowhere on the public documents. I snapped photos with my phone, pretending to text. The proxy bidder noticed and shifted the papers, but I'd already captured what I needed. "Congratulations on your purchase," I said, my voice like honey over broken glass. He packed up his folder without responding and walked out, probably heading to the next auction, the next life to dismantle. I turned to leave and nearly collided with my mother. Up close, I could see she'd been crying. Her mascara was smudged beneath the sunglasses. "Harper, don't," I stepped around her. "Just don't. You don't understand. Rick said it would help everyone. He said you'd be fine, that you had savings." He was right. I kept walking, letting her follow me to the parking lot. I do have savings and connections and a very particular set of skills he knows nothing about. "What are you going to do?" I stopped at my car, turned to face her. "I'm going to play by the rules, every single one of them, and when I'm done, Rick's going to wish he'd just asked nicely for that loan." "Harper, please, he's my husband." "And I'm your daughter. Remember what that used to mean." I got in my car and drove away, leaving her standing in the drizzle. In my pocket, my phone held photos of every document, every signature, every piece of the paper trail they thought they'd hidden. At home, I made coffee and opened my laptop. First, I filed a lis pendens on the property, a notice of pending legal action that would cloud the title and prevent any quick resale. Then I started digging into corporate records, following the breadcrumbs of Red Mesa Investments. Every LLC has to list a registered agent. Every registered agent has to maintain records. Every record leaves a trail. And in my experience, people who thought they were clever usually made the stupidest mistakes. It took me until 3 a.m., but I found it. Red Mesa Investments had been formed just 6 months ago. Its operating agreement had been filed with the Secretary of State, and while the members weren't listed publicly, the document ID matched a series used by the same law firm for all their shells. More interesting, Red Mesa shared a business address with 2 other LLCs, Silver Prairie Group and Tuscan Holdings. All 3 had been formed within days of each other. All 3 had the same registered agent. I leaned back in my chair, connecting the dots. Rick wasn't smart enough for this level of planning, but he was greedy enough to follow someone else's blueprint. Someone had shown him how to hide ownership, how to bid through proxies, how to steal a house in broad daylight. But every system had vulnerabilities, every scheme had a weak point. And I had 30 days before the redemption period expired to find it. Blake arrived at my duplex at 7 the next morning, carrying 2 cups of coffee and wearing his forensic accountant face, the one that meant business. "Show me everything," he said, setting the coffee on my dining table, now buried under papers and printouts. I walked him through the timeline, the forged signatures, the address changes, the shell companies, the auction. He listened without interrupting, occasionally picking up a document to examine it closer. "The backdated power of attorney is sloppy," he said finally, "but proving forgery in court takes time you don't have. What's your play?" "Turn their own game against them." I pulled up the corporate records on my laptop. "Look at the formation dates. Red Mesa, Silver Prairie, Tuscan Holdings, all created within a week, all using the same registered agent. That's not coincidence. That's a pattern." Blake studied the screen. "You think Rick owns all 3? "I know he does. The only question is what else he's hiding behind them." I showed him the next document. "I filed a formal complaint with the Northway Recorder's Investigation Division yesterday, but that's just defense. For offense, I need to become what they are." "You're forming your own LLC? Marigold Resolute, LLC, Delaware entity, registered yesterday." I slid the confirmation across the table. Clean, legal, and completely anonymous to anyone doing a casual search. Blake's eyebrows rose. "Marigold Resolute, MRL, your initials backward. Sometimes the best hiding place is in plain sight." "What's the plan?" I pulled up property records for Rick's known assets. Rick owns 3 properties we know about: the construction yard on Industrial Boulevard, a warehouse in Harlan Park, and a house he's flipping in Riverview. Every one of them has liens, mechanics liens, tax liens, HOA liens. Most people see liens as problems. I see them as opportunities. Because liens have priority rankings, Blake said, understanding dawning on his face. And if you own a senior lien, I control what happens to the junior debt, including the mortgages. I opened another file. The warehouse in Harlan Park has an environmental violation from 2 years ago: illegal disposal of construction waste. The county fined Silver Prairie Group $40,000, but the fine was never paid. It's been accumulating interest and penalties. That's a municipal lien. Those take priority over almost everything. Exactly. And guess what? The county is about to hold a lien auction for unpaid environmental fines. Starting bid $62,000 for a lien on a property worth at least $300,000. Blake whistled low. If you control that lien, you could foreclose on the warehouse. Or, I said, I could use it as leverage. See, Rick's construction loans have cross-default clauses. If he defaults on one property, the banks can call all his loans. It's standard language that nobody reads until it's too late. Jesus, Harper, you're going to domino his entire portfolio. Only if he doesn't return my house. I closed the laptop. I sent a settlement offer to Red Mesa's registered agent this morning. They can deed the duplex back to me, pay my legal costs, and admit to the fraudulent filings. In exchange, I'll drop all claims and investigations. Think they'll take it? Not a chance. Rick's too proud and too stupid. He thinks he won. I picked up my coffee, now cold. But that's fine. Every day he delays, I dig deeper. And Harper Lane, AT compliance specialist, has a very different skill set than Harper Lane, property investor. Blake gathered up several documents. What do you need from me? Full forensic workup on the money trail. Rick had to get the cash for that auction somewhere. If he borrowed it, I want to know from whom. If he liquidated assets, I want to know which ones. And Blake. I met his eyes. I need you to check Mom's accounts, too. His face softened. You sure about that? She was in that auction room. She knew. I turned away, staring out the window at the street I might not live on much longer. I need to know how deep she's in. After Blake left, I made 3 phone calls. First to a process server to deliver my settlement offer officially. Second to a real estate attorney who specialized in predatory lending cases. Third to June Voss. June had been an internal auditor for Northway County until she'd retired early after questioning too many suspicious property transfers. She'd left me a voicemail after my complaint was filed. Ms. Lane, I believe we have a mutual interest in certain irregular practices at the recorder's office. Coffee. We met at a diner on the south side, far from downtown. June was in her 60s, silver-haired and sharp-eyed, dressed like a librarian who could also audit your life into oblivion. Paige Holler, she said without preamble, sliding a folder across the table. Clerk in the recorder's office, started 3 years ago, right about when certain properties began experiencing unusual documentation changes. I opened the folder, photos of property transfers, tax records, change of address forms, dozens of them, all bearing suspicious signatures, all benefiting a handful of LLCs. You've been tracking this since before I retired, could never prove anything definitive. June sipped her coffee. But your complaint mentions Red Mesa Investments. That name appears in my files too, along with Silver Prairie and Tuscan Holdings. My pulse quickened. How many properties? At least 30 in the past 2 years. Small residential lots, mostly, the kind of places where owners might not check their tax bills regularly. She leaned forward. Your duplex fits the pattern perfectly. Out-of-state owner. I live there. According to the county records, you moved to Oregon 6 months ago. I stared at her. What? She pulled out another document. Change of address form, filed in January, same day as the tax address change. Someone was very thorough. The scope of it hit me like a physical blow. This wasn't just about my house. This wasn't even just about Rick. This was systematic theft, and my stepfather had stumbled into it or been recruited for it. Will you testify, I asked, if I can prove the forgeries? Will you provide evidence of the pattern? June smiled grimly. I've been waiting 3 years for someone to ask me that question. But Ms. Lane, you need to understand these people have been doing this for a while. They're not going to give up because of one complaint. Good thing I'm not filing just one complaint. I gathered the papers. I'm going to buy every lien they've ignored, file every motion they've avoided, and paper them with so much legal action they'll need to hire staff just to read it all. That's expensive. So is stealing my house. I stood to leave, then paused. One more thing. Do you have login records for the county system specifically? Who accessed my property records and when? June's smile widened. I might have archived some system logs before I retired, strictly for training purposes, of course. Of course. I left the diner with a flash drive in my pocket and a plan crystallizing in my mind. Rick thought he'd won with one auction bid. He had no idea the war had multiple fronts, and I was about to open every single one of them. That night, I created a spreadsheet tracking every property, every lien, every LLC connection. By the time I finished, I had a web of fraud that would make a RICO investigator proud. And at the center of it all, Rick Dalton, my mother's husband, who'd made the fatal mistake of thinking I'd roll over and play dead. The settlement offer would expire in 5 days. After that, Marigold Resolute, LLC would begin its shopping spree. Let the games begin. The construction yard on County Road 9 looked exactly like what it was a graveyard for Rick's ambitions. Rusted equipment sat next to piles of surplus materials, and a faded Dalton construction sign hung crooked on the chain-link fence. I parked across the street, watching through binoculars as Rick loaded salvaged copper piping into his truck. Even from here, I could see the stress in his movements, the way he kept checking his phone. My settlement offer had expired yesterday without response. Now came the consequences. Blake's forensic analysis had revealed the full picture. Rick was leveraged to the hilt, juggling payments between 3 properties like a desperate circus act. The construction yard served as collateral for the warehouse loan. The warehouse backed the flip house mortgage, and all of it ran through the shell companies, thinking that would protect him. He was wrong. The environmental lien on the yard is the key, I told Blake over the phone, still watching Rick. $62,000 in fines that Silver Prairie never paid. The county's been adding interest and penalties for 2 years. Current total, $87,000. And here's the beautiful part: environmental liens in Northway County take priority over everything except federal tax liens. They're what's called super priority. Blake whistled. Even over the first mortgage. Even over the first mortgage, which means whoever buys that lien at the county auction can foreclose on the entire property, wiping out Rick's equity and triggering default clauses in his other loans. When's the auction? Next Tuesday. Municipal lien sale. Same building where I lost my house. I watched Rick slam his truck gate shut. Poetic justice has a certain appeal. That evening, I met with my attorney, Sandra Reeves. She specialized in predatory lending and had the kind of reputation that made mortgage brokers nervous. Her office walls were covered with news clippings of cases she'd won. Your stepfather's made several critical errors, she said, reviewing my documentation. But the biggest is the paper trail. Every LLC has bank accounts. Every bank account has statements. And every statement shows money movement. She pulled up records on her computer. Marigold Resolute's research found something interesting. The day before your house auction, Silver Prairie Group received a wire transfer for exactly $119,000. Care to guess the source? My stomach tightened. Tell me it wasn't a home equity line of credit on your mother's separate property, the house she inherited from her mother. Sandra's expression was sympathetic, but professional. She pledged her inheritance to fund the purchase of your home. I sat back, the betrayal hitting fresh. Mom hadn't just known about the plan. She'd funded it. There's more, Sandra continued. The HELOC documents show Rick as co-borrower, but the property deed is still in your mother's name alone. That's unusual unless she was trying to protect it from his creditors. I laughed bitterly. She knew he was drowning and still gave him the rope. Or he pressured her. Financial abuse in marriages is more common than people think. I wanted to believe that, wanted to think my mother was a victim rather than a willing participant, but I'd seen her in that auction room. She'd made her choice. What's our next move? I asked. First, we need June Voss's testimony on record, a notarized affidavit about the pattern of fraudulent filings. Second, we file civil suits against both the LLCs and the individuals behind them for conspiracy to commit fraud. Third, she smiled, we attend a certain municipal lien auction. I spent the weekend preparing. June Voss provided not just an affidavit, but system logs showing Paige Holler had accessed my property records 17 times in the 6 months before the fraudulent filings. Each access corresponded with a document change. More damning, the IP addresses showed some changes were made from outside the county building. From a residential address that traced back to an apartment complex where Paige's boyfriend lived, her boyfriend, who happened to work at the law firm serving as registered agent for Rick's shell companies. The web was intricate, but every strand led back to the same people, and they'd gotten comfortable, sloppy, convinced their system was foolproof. Monday morning, I received a call from an unknown number. Ms. Lane. The voice was male, professional, nervous. This is David Marsh from Breslin and Associates. We represent Red Mesa Investments. Finally, I'm listening. Our client is willing to discuss a resolution regarding the Maple Street property. Would you be available to meet this afternoon? My settlement offer expired 3 days ago. We understand. However, circumstances have evolved. Our client is prepared to be more flexible. I smiled. They'd seen the lawsuits filed, the liens researched, the pattern exposed. They were scared. Tell your client this. I'll be at the municipal lien auction tomorrow. If they want to discuss anything, they can find me there. Ms. Lane, perhaps we could... I hung up. That night, I couldn't sleep. Everything I'd built over the past decade hung in the balance. But it wasn't about the house anymore. It was about the principle, about showing Rick and everyone else involved that some people don't just roll over when pushed. I pulled up the auction list one more time. Lot 23 environmental lien on property located at County Road 9. Starting bid, $62,000. In my briefcase, a cashier's check for $150,000 waited. Overkill, maybe. But I'd learned my lesson about bringing knives to gunfights. Tomorrow, the hunters would learn what it felt like to be prey. My phone buzzed. A text from an unknown number. You don't know what you're getting into. These people don't play games. I typed back, neither do I. Then I turned off the phone and tried to rest. Tomorrow would require clear eyes and steady hands. Tomorrow, I'd either reclaim my life or lose everything trying. But one thing was certain, Rick Dalton was about to discover that his stepdaughter had inherited something more valuable than any house, the ability to play the long game. And I never missed a shot when it counted. The plan came together like pieces of a circuit board, each component essential, each connection critical. I called it the pincer movement, though Blake preferred the squeeze play. Either way, the concept was simple attack from above with legal challenges while undermining from below with lean acquisitions. Timeline is everything, I explained to Sandra in her office Monday afternoon. The lis pendens on my duplex prevents Red Mesa from selling or refinancing. That's the defensive hold. But the municipal lien auction tomorrow, that's where we go offensive. Sandra nodded, reviewing the environmental violation reports. Once Marigold Resolute owns the lien on the construction yard, you can file for foreclosure immediately. Which triggers the cross-default clause in Rick's warehouse loan, I continued. First National Bank has very specific language. Any foreclosure action on collateral property allows them to call the entire note. Dominoes, Sandra murmured. But what about your mother's HELOC? I'd spent 3 sleepless nights wrestling with that question. She made her choice, but I'll give her one chance to separate her assets from Rick's before everything collapses. That evening, I drove to my mother's house, the one her mother had left her, the one she'd borrowed against to fund my destruction. She answered the door in yoga clothes, looking somehow smaller than I remembered. "Harper." She couldn't meet my eyes. "Rick's not here." "I know. He's at the warehouse, probably trying to figure out how to make Thursday's payment." I stepped inside without invitation. The house smelled like lavender and lies. "We need to talk about Grandma's house." She paled. "What about it?" I set a folder on her kitchen table. "Quitclaim deed. Sign it over to a trust. I've already had it created in your maiden name. It removes the property from anything connected to Rick or his businesses." "I can't do that. We're married. Community property." "This house was inherited, separate property under state law, unless you've added his name to the deed." I waited, watching her squirm. "You haven't, have you? Some part of you knew this day would come?" She sank into a chair. "He said it was just business, that you'd never even know. I'm offering you a life raft. Mom, sign the deed transfer. Today, because tomorrow, I'm buying the environmental lien on Rick's construction yard, and when I do, his entire financial house of cards collapses. The banks will call every loan. They'll pursue every asset, including the HELOC on this house. You wouldn't..." "I'm trying to save your house while destroying his empire. That's more consideration than you gave me." I pushed the deed across the table. "You have until midnight. After that, you're on your own." I left her crying at the table. Some bridges, once burned, couldn't be rebuilt, but I could at least keep her from drowning in the flood I was about to unleash. Back home, I found Blake waiting with Chinese takeout and a grim expression. "Found something," he said, spreading papers across my coffee table. "The money trail goes deeper than we thought. Rick's been cycling funds between the 3 properties for months, using each refinance to pay off the last, classic Ponzi structure, but with real estate. How long until it collapses on its own? 6 weeks, maybe 2 months. But here's the kicker. He showed me a bank statement. 2 days before your tax auction, Rick received a payment from Tuscan Holdings, $50,000, labeled consulting services. He doesn't consult on anything but bad decisions." "Exactly. So I dug deeper. Tuscan Holdings received that exact amount from a company called Meridian Property Services. And Meridian," he pulled up a corporate filing, "owned by Gerald Breslin." I sat back, pieces clicking. Breslin and Associates, the law firm that houses all the shell companies. "The same lawyer who called you today. They're not just registered agents. Harper, they're active participants. They funded Rick to grab your property." The scope of it staggered me. This wasn't just Rick being greedy. This was a systematic operation using desperate people like Rick as fronts to steal properties through fraudulent filings. "How many properties?" I asked. "Based on June's records and my analysis. At least 40 in the past 3 years. Small residential lots, tax-distressed properties, elderly owners who might not notice address changes." Blake's jaw tightened. "Your house wasn't personal. You were just another target." That should have made it easier. Instead, it fueled my anger. How many people had lost their homes to this scheme? How many had simply walked away, unable to fight back? "Change of plans," I said. "We're not just taking down Rick. We're taking down the whole network." Blake grinned. "Now you're talking. What do you need?" "Everything. Every property transfer. Every shell company. Every connection to Breslin's firm. And I need it packaged for the State Attorney General's office. White-collar crime division. Public corruption unit. Paige Holler is a government employee. The moment she used her access for private gain, it became a state matter." I spent the rest of the night preparing for the auction, but my mind was already 3 steps ahead. The municipal lien was just the opening move. The real game would play out in courtrooms and regulatory offices, with Rick as the thread that unraveled everything. My phone rang at 11:47 p.m. "Mom." "I signed it," she said quietly. "The trust deed. I'll file it in the morning." "Good." "Harper, I'm sorry. I thought I was helping. Rick convinced me you were being stubborn, that this would force you to be part of the family business." "I am part of a family business. Mom, just not the one you chose. I softened slightly. File the deed first thing, then find a lawyer. You're going to need one when Rick realizes what's coming. After hanging up, I made one last check of my preparations. Cashier's check, corporate documents for Marigold Resolute, power of attorney, everything in order. Tomorrow's auction would be different from the last one. This time, I wasn't defending. This time, I was hunting. And everyone involved in stealing my home was about to learn why you never corner someone who knows how to use the very systems you thought protected you. The construction yard lien would be mine by noon. By 12:01, I'd file for foreclosure. By close of business, Rick's lenders would be calling their loans. And by the end of the week, Breslin and Associates would be explaining to state investigators how a county clerk accessed property records from her boyfriend's apartment to facilitate fraudulent transfers. They'd stolen my house. I was going to take their entire world. Tuesday morning arrived crisp and clear, the kind of day that promised fresh starts or bitter endings. I dressed carefully. Navy suit, minimal jewelry, hair pulled back, professional, forgettable, deadly serious. The municipal lien auction drew a smaller crowd than the tax sale. Most investors ignored environmental liens, considering them too complex, their loss, my opportunity. I recognized several faces from the previous auction, including the proxy bidder who'd stolen my house. He sat in the front row, scrolling through his phone, unaware of my presence. Good. Lot 23, the auctioneer announced. Environmental lien. County Road 9, industrial property. Opening bid $62,000. $62,000, I called from the back. The proxy bidder's head snapped around. Recognition flashed across his face, followed by confusion. He whispered urgently into his phone. $65,000, another bidder offered. 70, 75. The proxy bidder jumped in, phone still pressed to his ear. I smiled. 85,000. The room stirred. Environmental liens rarely drew such aggressive bidding. The proxy bidder's face flushed as he listened to instructions. 90,000, he called. 100,000. 105. 120,000. I kept my voice level, almost bored. The proxy bidder frantically whispered into his phone. I could practically hear the panic on the other end. They hadn't expected competition. They certainly hadn't expected me. 120,000 going once. The auctioneer scanned the room. Going twice. 125, the proxy bidder almost shouted. 150,000. Silence. Even the auctioneer looked surprised. The proxy bidder lowered his phone, shaking his head at whoever was on the other end. 150,000 going once, twice, sold to bidder number 47. I walked to the clerk's table, passing the proxy bidder. Tell Breslin I'm just getting started, I whispered. The clerk processed my cashier's check with efficient keystrokes. Lien transfer will be recorded within 2 business hours, she informed me. You'll receive certified copies by end of day. 2 hours, by 2 p.m. Marigold Resolute LLC would own a super priority lien on Rick's construction yard. By 2:15, Sandra would file the foreclosure action. By 3 p.m., First National Bank's Risk Management Department would receive an automated alert about collateral property in distress. The dominoes were positioned. Time to push the first one. I spent the waiting hours in Sandra's office, drafting additional filings. We'd moved beyond simple foreclosure to a comprehensive attack on the entire network. State Attorney General's office confirmed receipt of our complaint, Sandra reported. They're particularly interested in the county employee angle. Paige Haller's going to have investigators at her desk by tomorrow. What about Breslin? Bar complaint filed this morning. Using client trust accounts to fund fraudulent property acquisitions violates about 12 different ethics rules. She pulled up another document. But here's the interesting part. Remember the Meridian Property Services connection Blake found? The company that funded Tuscan Holdings. Which funded Rick, well, Meridian's registered address. It's a mailbox at a UPS store, but the credit card paying for that mailbox? She smiled. Personal American Express, Gerald Breslin. He used a personal credit card for a shell company that funded property fraud. Lawyers are often the stupidest criminals. They think knowing the law means they can circumvent it. Sandra's phone buzzed. Transfers recorded. Marigold Resolute officially owns the lien. File the foreclosure. Already done. Courthouse e-filing system is wonderful for speed. She hit enter with satisfaction. First National Bank will know within the hour. My phone rang. Unknown number. But I recognized the voice immediately. David Marsh from Breslin and Associates. Ms. Lane, I'm calling to inform you that my client is prepared to return the Maple Street property immediately. Full deed transfer. All costs covered. Too late, counselor. I'm sorry. Check the municipal lien records. Lot 23. Sold about an hour ago. Your client's construction yard is now subject to immediate foreclosure by my LLC. I let that sink in. Which triggers default clauses in several other loans. But you knew that already. Silence. Then, what do you want? Justice, full confession of the fraudulent scheme, names of every person involved, return of all stolen properties to rightful owners, and Gerald Breslin's law license on a platter. That's impossible. You can't prove. Paige Holler accessed my property records from her boyfriend's apartment. Her boyfriend works for your firm. The IP addresses match. The timestamp logs match. The browser cookies show she was logged into both the county system and your firm's document portal simultaneously. I paused. Your IT security is as sloppy as your ethics. I'll need to consult with... You have 24 hours. After that, I file criminal complaints with the FBI for wire fraud, interstate commerce, RICO predicates, the whole menu. I checked my watch. Oh, and counselor. You might want to notify your malpractice carrier. The 43 property owners your scheme defrauded are about to become a class action. I hung up before he could respond. Blake met me for coffee, bringing a fresh stack of research. First National just called Rick's warehouse loan, gave him 10 days to pay in full or surrender the property. What about the flip house? Different bank, but same result coming. Once news of the construction yard foreclosure hits the credit reporting agencies, every lender will scramble to protect their position. He slid a paper across. Speaking of which, guess who's trying to quick sale the Riverview property? The listing showed Rick's flip house, priced 20% below market. Desperation sale. He needs cash to save something. Too bad the title's clouded. Seems someone filed a lis pendens claiming fraudulent transfer of funds. Blake grinned. That someone being Marigold Resolute LLC, based on the HELOC funded by stolen property. You're enjoying this, aren't you? I considered that. I'm enjoying the justice. Watching systems designed to protect people actually work when properly applied. Rick thought complexity would protect him. Instead, it became his vulnerability. My phone buzzed. A text from my mother. Filed the deed transfer. Thank you. At least one good thing would come from this wreckage. She'd keep her mother's house, even if she lost her husband. Though given what was coming, that might be a blessing. What's next? Blake asked. We wait. 24 hours for Breslin to fold. 48 for the state investigators to flip Paige Holler. 72 for Rick to realize he's not just broke, he's facing conspiracy charges. I raised my coffee cup. And then we attend another auction. Another one. The Harlan Park warehouse, scheduled for next week, assuming Rick can't cure the business tax default. I smiled. He won't be able to, not with every credit line frozen and every asset encumbered. You're going to buy that too. Someone has to. Might as well be someone who'll use it to ensure full restitution to the fraud victims. Blake laughed. Remind me never to piss you off. Your family, real family. I looked out the window at the city I'd called home for a decade. You'd never try to steal from me. Plus, I've seen what you do to people who cross you. I use their own weapons against them. Nothing more, nothing less. I turned back to him. Ready for round 3. The warehouse auction. The criminal trials. This was just the opening act. I pulled up the state attorney general's website on my phone. The real show starts when they arrest everyone involved. Think Rick will flip on Breslin. In a heartbeat, cowards always eat their own when cornered. I stood, gathering my papers. Come on, let's go watch the construction yard. I want to see Rick's face when he realizes the foreclosure notice is already posted. We drove in comfortable silence. Two siblings united in purpose. The war wasn't over, but the tide had turned, and unlike my opponents, I had truth, law, and a paper trail on my side. The construction yard came into view, and there it was, an orange foreclosure notice taped to the gate. Rick's truck was parked outside, and I could see him on his phone, gesticulating wildly. "Should we feel bad?" Blake asked. "Did he feel bad when he stole my house?" Point taken. We drove on, leaving Rick to rage at his locked gate. In 3 days, he'd receive notice of the warehouse auction. In 7 days, criminal investigators would start asking questions. In 10 days, his entire world would finish collapsing. But I'd have my house back, and 42 other families would have justice. Sometimes the best revenge isn't just served cold, it's served with properly filed paperwork and an understanding of exactly how the system works. The Harlan Park warehouse auction was set for Friday at 10 a.m. 3 days away, but those 3 days proved more eventful than I'd anticipated. Wednesday morning, Sandra called with news. Breslin blinked. His attorney reached out about a global settlement. Define global. Full confession, restitution to all victims, and voluntary surrender of law licenses plural. Turns out Gerald Breslin's partner, Marcus Webb, was neck-deep in this too. I sat at my kitchen table, reviewing the forensic accounting Blake had completed. What do they want in exchange? Recommendation for minimal jail time. They're offering to testify against everyone else involved, including your stepfather. And Paige Holler. Already flipped, state investigators executed a search warrant at her apartment yesterday, found detailed records of every fraudulent filing. She kept screenshots. Harper, screenshots of her boyfriend teaching her how to alter records, messages from Breslin directing which properties to target. She kept evidence of her own crimes. 26 years old, first real job. Thought she was building insurance against the lawyers. Instead, she built the prosecution's case. Sandra paused. There's something else. The investigation uncovered 17 more properties we didn't know about. All elderly owners. All had address changes filed right before tax sales. My coffee turned bitter. How many lost their homes? 11. The others caught it in time or had family members who noticed. I stood, pacing to the window. Outside, normal people lived normal lives, unaware that their property rights hung by threads that people like Breslin could snip with forged signatures. Take the deal, I decided. But with conditions. Full restitution plus damages. Every stolen property returned free and clear, and I want a victims fund established for anyone who can't be made whole. That's millions of dollars. Breslin's malpractice insurance will cover some personal assets for the rest. They wanted to play real estate mogul with other people's homes. They can liquidate their own to pay for it. After ending the call, I found an email from the warehouse mortgage holder Northway Commercial Bank. They wanted to discuss the upcoming auction. The meeting took place in a glass tower downtown. 3 executives in identical gray suits sat across from me, radiating corporate concern. Ms. Lane, the senior VP began, we understand you're planning to bid on the Harlan Park property. Public auction. Anyone can bid. Of course, but given your involvement in recent events, we thought it prudent to discuss options. He slid a folder across the table. The bank is willing to credit bid up to our full mortgage amount, $347,000. More than the property's value. They wanted to ensure they won. Freeze me out. That's your right. However, he continued, we'd prefer to avoid the auction entirely. If you're willing to release all claims against the property and assign your municipal lien position to us, we're prepared to offer a settlement. I opened the folder. Inside, a check for $90,000, barely more than I'd paid for the lien. No. Ms. Lane, be reasonable. You'll never outbid us at auction. Then why offer a settlement? I stood. Here's what you're missing. Rick Dalton personally guaranteed that mortgage using fraudulently obtained assets, every document he signed, every financial statement he submitted, was based on stolen property. That makes your mortgage potentially voidable. The executives exchanged glances. You're suggesting the bank is a victim. I'm suggesting you do deeper due diligence. How many other loans have you approved based on collateral that wasn't legitimately owned? I headed for the door. See you at the auction. That afternoon, June Voss called with urgent news. Harper, I've been reviewing old files. Found something you need to see. We met at the same diner. She pushed a manila envelope across the table, hands shaking slightly. After you left last time, I kept thinking about patterns, so I went back further. 5 years, 10 years. She tapped the envelope. This isn't new. The players change. But the game's been running for over a decade. I opened the envelope. Property records, tax sales, foreclosures, dozens of them, stretching back to 2012. Different LLCs, different registered agents, but the same pattern. Address changes, missed tax notices, quick sales to connected entities. Jesus, how many? At least 200 properties over 12 years. Small investors come in, run the scam for a few years, then disappear. New ones take their place. June leaned forward. But there's one constant. Every scheme used the same title company for closing's Pinnacle Title Services. Another piece clicked. Who owns Pinnacle? Shell Company registered in Nevada, but the office manager Patricia Breslin, Gerald's sister. The scope staggered me. This wasn't just Rick being greedy or even Breslin being corrupt. This was an institutional scam. A property theft ring operating for over a decade. Will you share this with the FBI? I asked. June smiled grimly. Already did. Agent Martinez wants to meet with you tomorrow. Thursday brought the FBI interview. 2 hours of detailed questions about everything I'd uncovered. Agent Martinez, a serious woman with sharp eyes, took notes in precise handwriting. This is the most comprehensive evidence package we've received on property fraud in years, she said finally. Your documentation is impeccable. I work in compliance. Documentation is what I do. We'll be executing federal search warrants tomorrow morning. Breslin and Associates, Pinnacle Title, and several other locations. She paused. Including your stepfather's properties. All of them. All of them. We believe he's been hiding assets. Cars titled to shell companies. Equipment purchased with stolen funds. She closed her notebook. Ms. Lane, what you've done here, most victims just walk away. You've built a federal case. I don't like bullies, I said simply. And I really don't like thieves who use the system against people who trust it. That evening, Blake brought pizza and updates. Rick's been calling Mom all day. She's not answering. Good for her. He knows about tomorrow's raid. Breslin's lawyer probably tipped him off. Word is he's trying to liquidate everything. Convert to cash. Let him try. Every bank account's monitored now. Every transaction flagged. I took a bite of pizza. Besides, he'll need his cash for bail. You think they'll arrest him? Tomorrow morning, FBI likes dawn raids. Dramatic, effective, catches people off guard. I checked my phone. Warehouse auction's still on for 10 a.m. Should be interesting with half the bidders in custody. Blake laughed. You're really going through with it. Wouldn't miss it. I've got a front row seat to watching everything Rick built on lies come crashing down. I raised my beer. Plus, Marigold Resolute needs assets to establish the victim's fund. That warehouse will auction for pennies on the dollar with all the clouds on title. And then we rebuild. Every victim gets made whole. Every stolen property returned. And maybe, just maybe, the next group of scammers thinks twice before targeting vulnerable homeowners. Think Mom will forgive you. I considered that. I'm not looking for forgiveness. I'm looking for justice. If she can't see the difference, that's her burden to carry. We finished dinner in comfortable silence. Two siblings who'd found their way back to each other through crisis. Tomorrow would bring arrests, auctions, and the final collapse of Rick's empire. But tonight, I had my brother, my integrity, and the knowledge that sometimes the system works exactly as designed when someone's willing to pull the right levers. The warehouse auction was in 16 hours, the FBI raids in 6, and my complete vindication in less than 24. Revenge, served with properly filed paperwork and a clear conscience, tasted better than any pizza. Friday morning arrived with federal agents at Rick's door at 6 a.m. I knew because Agent Martinez called me at 6:15. "Your stepfather's in custody," she informed me, along with Gerald Breslin, Marcus Webb, Patricia Breslin, and 6 others. Paige Haller was arrested yesterday evening. "What are the charges?" "Wire fraud, mail fraud, conspiracy, RICO violations. Your documentation made it a federal case." She paused. "The warehouse auction is still scheduled. Rick won't be bidding." I arrived at the courthouse at 9:45, wearing the same navy suit I'd worn to every auction. Poetic consistency. The usual crowd had gathered, but with notable absences. No proxy bidders from Breslin's stable. No mysterious LLCs represented by nervous lawyers. Just honest investors and me. "Lot 17, the auctioneer announced at exactly 10 a.m. "Commercial warehouse, Harlan Park, opening bid set at $47,000 for delinquent business taxes." The amount was pathetic compared to the property's value, but with federal investigations, clouded titles, and criminal prosecutions, nobody wanted to touch Rick's assets. "47,000, I called out. Silence. "50,000, a voice from the back offered. Local investor, clean reputation. 60, 70. We climbed slowly, cautiously, at 100,000. My competition dropped out. At 120, only 2 of us remained. 140, the other bidder offered. I stood, turning to face him. 141,000. He studied me, recognition dawning. The woman who'd brought down the property theft ring. He nodded respectfully and sat down. 141,000 going once, twice, sold to Marigold Resolute LLC. This time, I savored the walk to the clerk's table. No stolen property, no forged documents, no shell company conspiracies, just a clean, legal purchase that would fund restitution for victims. As I signed the papers, my phone buzzed. A text from Blake. "Check the news." The local station had broken the story. Massive property fraud ring exposed FBI arrests 12 in multi-million-dollar scheme. I walked outside into brilliant sunshine. Across the street, a news van was setting up. They'd want interviews, statements, sound bites. Let them wait. Sandra met me at her office with champagne and final paperwork. Breslin's insurance company agreed to the victims' fund, $8 million, plus another $4 million from personal asset forfeiture. Every stolen property returned. Every single one. Clear titles. All fees waived. Damages paid. She raised her glass. "You did it." "We did it." June with her records. Blake with his analysis. You with the legal framework. I touched my glass to hers. And 43 families getting their homes back. That afternoon. I stood in the doorway of 1437 Maple Street, my duplex. The locks had been changed during the chaos, but Sandra had secured an emergency court order. The new keys felt heavy in my hand. Inside, everything was as I'd left it 6 weeks ago. My coffee mug still sat by the sink, mail still piled on the counter, but everything felt different now. A car pulled up outside, my mother. She stood at the threshold, uncertain. "May I come in?" I stepped aside. She entered slowly, taking in the space she'd helped steal. "I filed for divorce this morning," she said quietly, "and I'm testifying for the prosecution." "Why?" "Because my daughter taught me that standing up to bullies matters more than comfortable lies." She met my eyes. "I'm sorry, Harper, not just for the house, for choosing him over you. For being weak when you needed strength." "I don't need apologies. Mom, I need you to be better." "I'm trying. I've got my house, Thanks to you, and a therapist, thanks to finally seeing clearly, she moved toward the door, then paused. Your father would have been proud. The way you fought, the way you won, that was all him. After she left, I sat on my porch, watching the neighborhood return to normal life. The warehouse would be converted into a community center. Funded by the Victims Fund, the duplex would remain my home. Harder won than before, but more precious for the fighting. My phone rang, unknown number, but I answered. Ms. Lane, this is Stephen Caldwell from the State Attorney General's office. I wanted to personally thank you. Your case has led to reforms in property recording systems statewide. What happened to you won't happen to anyone else. That's all I wanted. Also, there's a position opening in our white-collar crime division. Your unique combination of technical expertise and, frankly, sheer determination would be invaluable. I smiled. Send me the details. As sunset painted the sky, Blake arrived with Chinese food and news. Final count. 17 people arrested, 212 properties recovered, 4 counties implementing new verification systems. And Rick, looking at 15 to 20 years, turns out he was hiding more than we knew. Offshore accounts, hidden assets, the works. Blake shook his head. He got greedy, got caught, got exactly what he deserved. We ate in comfortable silence. 2 siblings who'd weathered a storm and emerged stronger. The fortune cookies came with the check, and I cracked mine open. Your persistence will be rewarded. Blake laughed. Bit late on that prediction. Or right on time. I looked around my reclaimed home. Persistence was rewarded, justice was served, and everyone who thought they could steal from hardworking people learned otherwise. Think it's over. This chapter is, but there are always more Rick Daltons, more Gerald Breslins, more people who think complexity can hide corruption. I stood, clearing the table. Good thing I kept all my research, and that job offer sounds interesting. Harper Lane, white-collar crime fighter. Has a nice ring to it. As Blake left, I stood in my doorway one more time. The street was quiet, peaceful. Somewhere, 42 other families were standing in their own doorways, grateful to be home. Somewhere, federal prosecutors were building cases that would protect future victims. And somewhere, Rick Dalton was learning that when you steal from the wrong person, you don't just lose the game, you lose everything. I'd won more than my house back. I'd won proof that one person with determination, documentation, and the right allies could bring down an entire criminal enterprise. The door clicked shut behind me. Home, earned twice, valued beyond measure. Sometimes the best revenge isn't just about winning. It's about ensuring nobody else has to fight the same battle. And that victory, that was worth everything. Thank you all for listening to this story. I'd love to hear where you're tuning in from. Drop a comment below and let's connect. Share our thoughts about Harper's journey. If this story of justice and determination resonated with you, please subscribe to the channel, hit that like button, and don't forget to press the hype button to help more people discover this tale of sweet revenge. Your support means everything.